The Moon has long been believed to have formed as a result of a humongous impact with the Earth. A Mars-sized celestial body could have driven itself into our planet and made part of its crust shatter. The resulting debris then packed together in a tight ball, which later became our Moon. But there's one question that's been bugging scientists. The Earth's crust is poor in metals, so how come the Moon has so much metal within it? The latest research basically throws the main theory out the window. So we again know nothing about our closest neighbors coming to existence. On the Moon, iron is preserved in pristine condition because there's no oxygen. It simply can't rust there. But a couple of years ago, scientists made an unexpected discovery. In the higher regions of our satellite, iron is oxidized and actually rusting. At first, this finding perplexed astronomers to no end. The presence of rust might mean people can breathe, at least in certain areas of the Moon. But then the explanation surfaced. Oxygen might have got to the lifeless rock from our own planet. In the absence of atmosphere, solar winds beat the Moon relentlessly, and nothing can stop them. These flares could swoop some oxygen from the upper layers of the Earth's atmosphere and carry it all the way to the Moon. The molecules then come to rest at the highest points of the Moon's surface. That would explain why metals don't get oxidized in the ravines, and especially under the surface of the satellite. Water on Earth is actually a puzzle shrouded in mystery and covered with riddles. The most popular theory is that it was brought to our planet by icy comets and asteroids that left behind not only mighty craters, but the liquid substance, thanks to which we can now thrive. But there's a new advance which suggests another scenario. In space, there's a whole lot of organic matter, and under specific conditions, it could yield so much water, it would be enough to fill our oceans 1,000 times over. Researchers conducted an experiment in which they heated this organic matter and obtained clear water and oil. If this is confirmed in future studies, it could mean that even oil appeared on Earth, not only thanks to fossilized remains of living beings, but came from outer space as well. The climate changes we're witnessing are most probably part of a natural cycle. Researchers from the University of California's Santa Cruz have devised a pattern in our planet's climate variations, and they look like extremely long seasons. Sometimes, these states could last for millions of years, and they're all related to how the Earth is positioned relative to the Sun. The seasons were dubbed Ice House, Cool House, Warm House, and Hot House, according to the prevalent temperatures. For the past 3 million years, for example, our planet has been in the state of Ice House, since the last ice age was not so long ago. But humanity's actions, adding to the greenhouse effect, have pushed the climate state to Warm House much faster than it would have come without us. When it finally comes, the overall temperature on Earth will rise to tropical values, something that the planet hasn't seen in over 50 million years. What a time to be alive! Back to the Moon now. You can see it at different places, in different sizes, and even in different colors every night. The size and location are pretty easy to explain. As the Earth rotates around its axis and revolves around the Sun, we see the Moon traveling around the night sky and getting either closer to or farther from our planet. What makes it bright yellow tonight and ominously dark red tomorrow is a more complex thing. The natural color of the Moon, as seen from outside the Earth's atmosphere, is brownish gray. From the surface of our planet, though, it may vary a lot. When seen right above our heads, it usually looks bright and almost white, because its reflected light passes through a relatively thin layer of the atmosphere. Almost nothing blocks and refracts the shine, so it's very clear. The Moon can appear yellow, orange, or even red when it's seen just above the horizon. The effect is similar to what happens at sunrise or sunset, when the Sun appears to be red. The light goes a much longer way to reach your eyes from that location, and much of the blue part of its spectrum gets lost. This turns the color of the light into a much warmer variety. Our natural satellite can also appear blue, and the reason for that is the presence of fine particles in the air. They refract the light anyway, so the Moon is actually never the way it looks outside the atmosphere. But when they're larger than usual, they turn its color bluish. Finally, there's an extremely rare occasion where the Moon can look purple. Nobody actually knows for sure why this happens, but astronomers believe it must be a combination of the atmosphere, dust particles, and maybe something else. There's no clear explanation. Moonquakes aren't something from science fiction. They don't occur as often as on our planet, and when they do, it happens closer to the center of the satellite. Scientists think moonquakes might be caused by the gravity of Earth and the Sun. There are Marsquakes too. For a long time, the red planet had been considered tectonically inactive, but more recent observations have shown it still has weak quakes from time to time. You probably wouldn't even be able to feel them if you stood on Mars's surface, but it means some geological processes are still going on underneath the red and dusty landscape. There's no dark side to the moon. Our satellite is tidally locked with Earth, meaning it's always turned to us with one side, while the other always looks away. The sun is much farther from us than the moon, and we're both turning round and round, warming and lighting this side and that in turn. It means that once in every short while, the moon is lit by the sun from either side. It's just that we can't see it from where we are. Each year, the moon is moving away from Earth because of the interaction between the moon's gravitational force and our oceans. It moves around 1.5 inches away each year, which means in 600 million years, it will be 14,600 miles further from Earth than it is now. The number isn't accidental. That's the time when total solar eclipses will stop happening. There is water on the moon. Not puddles or lakes, but grains of water ice exist in permanently shadowed parts near the moon's poles. Scientists think water got on the moon a long time ago, during a period when both the moon and Earth were constantly struck by asteroids and comets. Those contain water ice. This process may have even helped us get our own lakes and oceans, not just the moon's icy water. Newer research says the moon's interior already had water, and it went to the surface during volcanic activity. The same might have happened on our planet too. For those of you who think the Earth only has one moon, there are 2 more asteroids locked into co-orbital orbits with our planet. The first one doesn't really circle around the Earth, but has some sort of a synchronized orbit with the planet. That's why it looks like it's following the Earth in a stable orbit, while in reality, it has its own specific path around the Sun. The other one follows a horseshoe orbit around our planet. Its specific path brings this asteroid closer to us every 95 years. The moon has its own time zone called Lunar Standard Time. Time is different on the moon, so a year there is divided into 12 days, considering each is as long as our month. Days got names after astronauts who walked on the moon. The moon calendar starts the moment Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon in 1969. The crust of the moon is not equally thick in all its parts. The average thickness is about 31 miles. But there are much thinner and much thicker areas. This is sometimes due to craters found all across its surface, and there are also big hollow tubes underneath. A lunar orbiter found one such tube several years ago, and it's pretty enormous. Although the tube's shape is irregular, it could swallow an entire football field. Scientists are still unsure what they could find in its depths. It could be a tunnel system, or some geological wonder in there. The most popular explanation of this thing is that it's a lava tube, the likes of which can be found on Earth too. When a lava flow cools, it gets a hard crust, which later thickens and creates a roof over that same lava. It continues to flow, but when it stops, the channel can drain, which results in an empty tube.
Wow. The NASA hotline is ringing off the hook. The call center operator is all sweaty from stress. They barely have time to answer the phone, and all the messages they get say the same thing. There's something glowing on the moon. Indeed, hundreds and thousands of amateur astronomers were watching the moon that night. And suddenly, there was a bright light on it, as if someone had lit a powerful spotlight on the surface. Scientists immediately began to look for an explanation to this phenomenon. They first thought it was simply the glow of an airplane flying between the observers and the moon. But then it wouldn't have been seen by so many people from different parts of the world at the same time. The next suspects were the Starlink satellites. Theoretically, one of them could have played a cruel trick on amateur astronomers. They could have mistaken the small satellite's light for a flash of light on the moon. But then again, if the satellite were the culprit of this mess, the flare wouldn't be static, but moving. While some scientists continue to search for an answer to this mystery, others decide to investigate the phenomenon in more detail. For this purpose, they have built a new telescope north of Seville, Spain. The conditions there are quite suitable for observing the moon. The telescope has 2 cameras, controlled remotely from the campus in Germany. If both cameras pick up any unusual phenomenon on the surface of the moon, it will quickly zoom the telescope there to see what's going on. It'll also require advanced artificial intelligence to teach the cameras to distinguish between the unexplained phenomenon on the moon and the light of an airplane, a satellite, or a small meteorite that just entered the Earth's atmosphere. While the telescope is doing its investigation, we already have a theory that may explain the appearance of such bright round flashes on the moon's surface. So, the moon influences the tides of the seas and oceans on Earth with its gravitational force. But the Earth can affect the moon in the same way. Only the force will be 32.5 times stronger. While the moon orbits the Earth, at one point it may be as close to our planet as possible. Then the force of the interaction will be greatest. At this point, tidal forces may force cracks in the surface of the moon to open and release gas from its interior. A powerful jet of gas will lift the lunar dust with it, and what we see as a bright flash through our telescopes is really just a fog of dust, which is round and reflects sunlight well. If you look at it from a distance, it really does look like a flash. As the dust rises, we think there's been a small explosion, and that flash gradually fades as the dust settles down. These things happen all the time on the moon's surface. They're called transient lunar phenomena, and besides lunar flashes, much more mystical and bizarre things have happened. Back in 1178, 5 monks claimed to have seen the moon, being in the shape of a horn, begin to split in 2 from an upper point. Then fire and sparks began to blaze from the place of separation. It was as if a dragon were spewing flames. In the next moment, the moon began to pulsate and then returned to its calm state. This phenomenon was repeated more than 10 times, and the flames took different shapes each time. When this nightmare was over, the moon turned black. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists tried to explain the phenomenon. They theorized that a large asteroid collided with the moon at the time, and it was this asteroid that should be blamed for creating the Giordano Bruno crater, 15 Brooklyn bridges wide. But in that case, millions of tons of fragments from the asteroid would have hit the Earth as well, and then people would have seen an incredible meteor shower. It would have been very bright, and the memories of it would definitely have been in the archives. But that didn't happen. Now the phenomenon the monks observed seems questionable. Perhaps they did see an asteroid fall, only it was falling on the Earth itself, and they perceived the light from the burning meteorite as something sinister happening on the moon. Or maybe the monks were simply imagining things. There's no witnesses to this event other than them. Another unusual phenomenon is the blue and red lights on the moon. They can be seen when it's horn-shaped, and this occurs most often in the Aristarchus crater. The flashes come and go very quickly, almost like lightning. In fact, this is electricity. Tidal forces are to blame for this too. They cause mechanical stress to build up in the rocks. This can produce an electric field, which creates the blue flashes that have surprised many amateur astronomers. There can also be starbursts on the moon. We can blame this on meteorites that fall on the surface. Because the moon has no atmosphere, asteroids that approach it don't burn up. Having a lot of weight and speed, they cause an explosion on impact. And here on Earth, we see it as a starburst. For example, on May 13, 1972, there was a meteorite impact of 1,000 tons of TNT near where Apollo 14 landed. If we lived much earlier, we might have witnessed constant bright flashes on the moon's surface. All the craters there are formed by such meteor strikes. So imagine the fireworks that were there years ago. And a lot of those meteorites were even useful too. They brought water with them. Yes, there is water on the moon. NASA confirmed this fact after studies with the SOFIA telescope. It was mounted on an airplane. The observations were made from the upper atmosphere of the Earth. At such an altitude, the dry air allowed the telescope to see even the smallest details. Water might have been in the craters at the poles of the moon. These places have never seen light, and the water there might be encased in ice. But SOFIA found water on the sunlit surface of the moon. Of course, it's only H2O molecules that are present in the dust layers, but that's something. If we manage to collect all this water, we'll get very little of it. In comparison, the Sahara Desert has about 100 times more water than we found on the moon. But an even more unusual phenomenon is happening there right now. The moon is actually rusting, just like a piece of old metal. For rust to appear, we need iron, water, and oxygen. Lunar soil has enough iron in it, and as we've already learned, there's some water too. The last piece of the puzzle is oxygen. Everyone knows there's no atmosphere on the moon, and we can't breathe there, but oxygen is still present. The solar wind brought it there. The wind from our warm star moves at an extremely high speed. It scrapes oxygen from the upper parts of our atmosphere and carries it further through space. Eventually, the wind with the oxygen molecules reaches the moon. Voila! All the ingredients for corrosion are in place, and the iron ore on the surface of the moon begins to take on a reddish hue. If this process goes on long enough, in the distant future, the moon will look like Mars. It will turn orange-red. Yes, the signature color of Mars came exactly from that corrosion that began there thousands and thousands of years ago, when there were rivers and seas with water and an atmosphere with oxygen. Other strange objects that can be seen on the moon were left there by humans. Between 1969 and 1972, 12 people visited there as part of the Apollo program. In all, there were 6 landing sites where the astronauts left a bunch of stuff behind. Besides a couple of dozen satellites and spacecraft that fell or landed softly on the moon, there's a lunar rover, some United States flags, a family photo of one of the astronauts, and even 3 golf balls. And the first 2 people to be on the moon left behind a whole pile of stuff. When they were about to go home, they took a lot of soil samples and rocks with them. And to carry it all away, they had to get rid of everything unnecessary on board the lunar module. The TV camera, the sample collection tools, the science equipment, and even the armrests from the seats. The astronauts stood outside the lunar module for a full 8 minutes and threw out a whole mountain of unnecessary items. If you collect all these objects and debris that we left there by 12 astronauts and put them on the scales, it will show about 199 tons. It's like 3 heavy armored tanks or 3 large passenger planes. Strange, but true. In the near future, people have made the greatest space discovery in history. The entire population of Earth looks up to the sky to see the greatest astronomical show ever. Is this real? What does it mean? Scientists have been studying galaxies, planets, and black holes millions of light years away. But all this time, something fantastic has been hiding in plain sight right above our eyes, on the moon. Starting a few years ago, humans began going to the moon again and finally set up a permanent base there. While excavating the lunar landscape, one lucky drill smashed into something like a metal plate. It turns out that metal contains polycarbonate, aluminum, gold, and silver. That's very similar to something humans already have on Earth. It's basically what CDs are made out of. People start going excavation crazy. Who knows what else is down there? The moon turns out to be our greatest resource. After a few months, lunar construction equipment has excavated several hundred feet of the shiny surface. At first, it was kept quiet, but a year later, that becomes impossible. Excavation crews dig out a huge rectangular shiny piece, the size of 10 football fields. And that plate is not alone. There are literally millions of them. After a little more research, scientists discover that the entire surface is covered with this strange material. People gaze up every night at the unusual moon in the starry sky. It glows a little brighter than before. You only need the most ordinary telescope to see that things are about to get weird. The excavation work isn't complete, but scientists have concluded that the moon is a huge disco ball. Who created it? For what? And what does this mean for us humans? No one has any answers. Soon, humans managed to dig up more than half of the moon. In some places, the plates are too deep to get to. They're stuck under mountains. In other places, the plates of the disco ball lie directly under the surface. Somehow, even with this crazy discovery, the properties of the moon haven't changed in any way, except that it's become brighter. Attempts to dig deeper, to pierce through the plates, are hopeless. The layer of polycarbonate and metal alloys is too thick and seems to go deep into the core of the moon. Some scientists suggest that if the moon's surface resembles a CD, it might just mean that there's some information recorded on it. That would change the course of history. They decide to build a laser reader to see if the moon really is a whopping big CD. Meanwhile, the drilling continues. On the dark side of the moon, which isn't always dark by the way, people find a small crater. Surprisingly, there's no shiny material inside. This perfectly round hole looks like a dried-up lake. At first, everyone assumes that there was a plate there. It just must have flown off somehow. But then, why was that crater so perfectly round? After a little more investigation, diggers find something that looks like plastic. What's that all about? Then, unexpectedly, the digging stops. The huge rig smashes against a thick alloy of unique durable plastic. There's a perfectly round plastic disc hiding inside the crater, the only one on the entire moon. It becomes clear that this huge disco ball was created by something billions of years ago. It's been covered with cosmic dust ever since. IT specialists scan the entire lunar surface with the help of satellites. They find something. It looks like there's a complex electronic system hidden under the disk. If you look at the moon as a whole, the crater starts to look an awful lot like, well, a button. Time to press play on the moon. To understand what's going on there, scientists try to get through the plastic layer. While they're doing that, there's an accident. An automatic drill explodes under insane pressure. The blast is so strong that it activates the button. All of humanity freezes in fear. There's silence, real silence. Then, it happens. The moon starts to rotate ever so slowly on its axis. Then, hour after hour, it rotates faster and faster. There's a mad rush to get everyone off the moon. Soon, it'll be spinning too fast to take off from safely. A lot of people fly halfway across the planet, where it's night, to see what's up with the moon. Every TV channel, website, blog, vlog, live stream, everyone's broadcasting the same images. Those of the great disco ball in the sky. The moon begins to spin so fast that all the loose rock and sand on its surface gets scattered in different directions. Some lunar fragments fall on Earth and create an incredible meteor shower. The moon is spinning faster and faster. Now it looks like a real disco ball. The night sky is lit up with bright rays of white. It's incredible. People are ecstatic, amazed, delighted. But a moment later, all of humanity descends into a deep state of fear. Astronomers report that the moon is approaching Earth. When it gets too close, Earth's gravity will destroy it, and the giant crushed-up disco ball will smash into our planet. Every hour, the moon gets bigger in the night sky. Floods are starting to break out all over the world. People dust off their underground bunkers and get inside. There's no time to blast the moon with a rocket or anything like that. This could be it. The moon creeps closer and closer to the Earth's atmosphere. Then it stops, and nothing happens. Incredible! The disco ball isn't affected by our planet's gravity. Some sort of ancient technology inside the moon just saved us from disaster. Then, a deafening sound booms out from the night sky. It's coming from the disco ball. The sound wave obliterates all the clouds in the sky. It sounds like a roar, a deafening bass that makes the ground shake. It's intimidating, scary, but then a rhythm starts to come out from the wall of sound. Impossible! There's music coming right out of the moon. Then, some plates start to change color. They turn purple, pink, blue, green. It looks wild. The different color rays dance around on the Earth's surface. It gives everyone an insane energy boost. Everyone wants to be outside with friends, neighbors, anyone. One moment, you're standing under a green glow, and a second later, everything around you gets lit up in pink. The incredible light show creates an unbelievable desire to dance. DJs around the world team up to record a whole new sound that mixes with the moon's music. They call it MLB, the Moon Light Beat. People all over the world go out into the streets and kick off the biggest party ever. Scientists now think that billions of years ago, our planet was inhabited by huge intelligent beings, the size of Mount Everest. They wanted a party and set about creating a huge disco ball. Then these creatures moved on to another planet. Earth was getting kind of cramped, and the disco ball was simply forgotten. Over millions of years, dust and rock obscured it from view. For several months, the moon continues to spin, and DJs keep pumping out music. People start to get a bit tired of the whole thing. They want a bit of silence and a calm, starry sky, not a glittering moon disco ball. Humanity starts experiencing mass insomnia and dizziness. All flights are grounded because the bright colored flashes make it impossible for pilots to see properly. Unfortunately, no one knows how to turn this thing off, and it's impossible to study because the moon's moving around too fast. The problem is solved by itself. The ball stops and returns to its orbit. It's possible that it just ran out of battery. People aren't exactly in a rush to reactivate it, but they leave detailed instructions for their descendants in case they want to throw a global party.